my life has gone back to normal. Currently, I don't feel safe anywhere. I used to dorm at my college, but I had to go back home during the second semester due to strange occurrences happening there. I don't plan on dorming anytime soon. It might not be the smartest thing to share this since it's still under investigation, but maybe it will make people more cautious of social networking. It sure has made me wary of trusting strangers online again. November of last year was when the messages first appeared. Ever heard of Snapchat before? For those of you who don't know what Snapchat is, it's an app that lets you send picture messages to your friends, but that only lasts for a couple of seconds. Once those seconds are up, the picture disappears forever, meaning you can never see them again. You can only send pictures you take at the moment, and they can only be seen for the few seconds of the time that's given. You can also draw and write text on the pictures. You can even send videos. I never really knew about Snapchat up until I was introduced to it by my friends. They practically encouraged me to download it, and being the weak-willed person I am, I gave in to peer pressure. It seemed kind of fun at first. I was taking pictures and sending them like crazy. Most of the time, I just took pictures of myself making the goofiest faces and putting random letters for text. I also went out of my way to take pictures of the funniest things. I remember taking a picture of this dude's butt crack while he bent down to tie his shoes. Yeah, it was sick, but downright hilarious to me. There were a lot of people who added me as a friend on Snapchat. Most of them came from Facebook or the contact list on my phone. This also included some people I didn't know too well, but they still sent me pictures either way, and it was actually pretty nice. I guess Snapchat made it easier to break the ice with people I randomly added or haven't seen in a while. One day in November, someone called WeAreOne_Forever added me on Snapchat. At the moment, I didn't think too much of it. I figured it was just another one of my Facebook friends. Instantly, the first message this person sent me was a paper with Sharpied handwriting on it and a heart drawn underneath it. It read, "Hey cutie, how are you?" Once 4 seconds had passed, the message had disappeared. I was flattered by the fact that whoever this person was referred to me as cutie. I'm guessing it was probably a girl flirting with me a little bit. I sent her back a picture of me with my eyebrow raised and a smirk on my face. After that, I added the text, "I'm doing good. You think I'm a cutie?" and then sent it to her for 5 seconds. About a few minutes later, I got another picture from her. The picture was of a teddy bear carrying a red heart with a white backdrop. The text read, "You are on my top 5. Right away, I wanted to know who this person was. For the next couple of days that we messaged each other, she never sent me a picture of herself. For some reason, she wouldn't even tell me her name. I kept pushing her to send me a picture, but she always made excuses or sent stupidly drawn stick figures instead. With that, I believe that she was either really ugly or really shy, and I was hoping for the latter. I decided to let it go, thinking she must really be into me if she's that secretive with revealing her face and even her name. One day while I was in the library, I checked Snapchat real quick while I was taking a break from typing a paper for one of my courses. Sure enough, there was a message from WeAreOneForever. As soon as my finger tapped it open, I almost jumped out of my seat. She sent me a picture of a person, the first time she's ever done so. But that's not what got me all bothered about this picture. I knew that the picture of this person definitely was not her. In fact, it was a guy sitting on a couch, white shirt, blue sweatpants, looking straight into a laptop, bookshelves in the background. The text read, "I see you." I looked behind and around me. There was no one who seemed suspicious, just a bunch of college students in their own little worlds. Still, I didn't want to read too much into it. After all, why psych myself out for something that seemed like harmless flirting? I sent her a picture of me with this confused look on my face and typed out, "I don't see you. Why don't you say hi?" The next picture she sent me was of a poster of my college mascot with the text, "I was so nervous. You're just too cute." From how I saw it, it just seemed like I had a secret admirer who possibly went to the same college. I sent her a message asking, "So you go to my college too?" She never answered my question, even though she opened my message. Things just got weirder after that small incident. After a couple of times, she sent pictures of me walking in lecture halls, eating in the cafe, making lines for food, and even talking to my friends. I don't remember all the texts, but there were some that stood out to me like, "I see you everywhere. It's so funny how close I am to you. And one day, you'll know who I am." I started to think my friends might have been playing a joke on me, as they're known to do that. I asked my best friend Andrew one day if he was the one sending me all these weird Snapchats. He told me he had no idea what I was talking about, and I explained to him the whole thing, that this person called We Are One Forever had been sending Snapchats of me. Andrew said that was pretty creepy, and they must have had some obsessive stalker who obviously had no life. I was secretly hoping he was the one behind all of it, but I knew he was telling the truth. We Are One Forever doesn't have the same handwriting Andrew has. Besides, dude can't lie his way out of a paper bag. After talking to Andrew, I asked all my other friends about it, but they also told me the same answer. Either it really wasn't them, or they were playing some seriously elaborate mindfuck on me. One of them had to come clean, but no one ever did, and the Snapchats were getting a little too eerie. My secret admirer started sending pictures of only me and nothing else. She rarely added text on them anymore. It was like she was playing Where's Waldo with me, and oddly enough, I was Waldo. It became her mission to send a picture of me at least once a day. I began to pay more attention to my surroundings, but the only people I see every day were my friends. I never saw the same face everywhere I went. I figured my friends had to be the ones messing with me. Eventually, I stopped sending messages to We Are One Forever, thinking it was best to ignore and pretend like it didn't bother me if it were them. I didn't mention the messages anymore, and I even stopped opening them. They just kept piling on wherever I went on Snapchat. The fall semester was almost over at that time. December came, followed by colder days and nights loaded with college assignments, projects, and final exams. Even though all of this sounded intimidating, I was a little relieved, to be honest. It gave me the excuse to focus all my attention on something more important than those messages. And yet, whenever I looked at my phone for the time or a new text message, I always saw a notification from Snapchat. We Are One Forever sent you a message, is what it would say. After a week of ignoring them, I finally let curiosity get the best of me. Once I started opening one, I saw a picture of me, but when I blinked, it was already gone. I opened up another message, me again, but it disappeared as fast as the last one. As I opened those messages one by one, I could feel my heart sink deeper and deeper with each message. They were all pictures of me all over campus. I couldn't even fathom as to how this person was able to follow me from one place to another. She even took pictures of me during lectures and when I came out of bathrooms. That day, I decided to stay in my dorm room since I was starting to become actually paranoid from all of this. My roommate, John Michael, wasn't there for most of the time. Some of my friends were texting me to join them for lunch, but I was in no mood to come out and show myself to my secret admirer. She seemed to know where I was every single time. To avoid my chances of being another Snapchat message, I only came out that day to buy myself a sandwich. When I looked at my phone a few times, I was pleasantly surprised at the lack of Snapchat notifications from her. I was able to breathe normally again, even though part of me was worried about going out. After all, I couldn't just stay trapped in my dorm room every day. I had classes to be in, friends to hang out with, and parties I wanted to go to before the semester ended. That night, I couldn't really sleep. I actually felt more alive that moment than I did the whole day. It was impossible for me to go to sleep when I had a million thoughts racing through my mind. Unsurprisingly, all those thoughts were related to those damn Snapchat messages. Finally, I fell asleep for what felt like hours looking at the darkness. The next morning, I woke up tired and not in the greatest of moods. I checked my phone to see the time. It was 12 in the afternoon. Out of habit, I also checked Snapchat for any new messages I could have received. The more recent messages were from We Are One Forever. Her messages took up all of my Snapchat. It had to be almost 50 she sent me. Seeing her username alone made my body tremble with morbid curiosity. Before I opened the messages, I noticed something was off about them right away. She sent me videos in the more recent Snapchats, which is something that never happened before. Also, the time she sent me those messages was about 6 hours ago. It made me extremely hesitant to open any of them, but something inside of me was demanding me to do it. She had to be taking pictures of something else that night. I was in bed the whole time. However, once I opened her first message, I couldn't believe my own eyes, and even thought for that second that I was going insane. I wanted to scream. Immediately I regretted my decision of ever opening that message. Just thinking about it gave me chills alone. At first, I couldn't make out what the picture was. It seemed dark, but she must have enabled the flash option because there was a bright light illuminating the subject of the picture. Even though the picture was only for a second, I was able to make out what it was in the second and third picture, and by the 20th picture, my eyes confirmed it was someone lying in bed. It made my heart beat unnervingly fast. Those were the most horrifying seconds of my life. As I kept opening these messages, they were the same pictures of someone sleeping. The more recent messages became closer and closer views of the person. The closer they were, the more they confirmed my fears about the person in the picture. And the videos. Oh God, the fucking videos. They may have been only 5 videos, but they showed uncomfortable close-ups of that person's face in the glowing flashlight. And then there was that typical noisy, silent audio in the background, and my own sleeping face. It broke me down as I immediately dialed my college's police department. I told them someone broke into my room last night, and that I was being stalked by someone I didn't know who was also sending me pictures of myself. I tried to explain as much as I could, but they couldn't even understand what I was saying because I sounded like a complete mess. And they came over to check up on my dorm room, observe any forcible entry that could have taken place, and even question my roommate for an hour. I showed them my Snapchat to prove the multiple messages the person was sending me. Unfortunately, they couldn't retrieve them and see the actual pictures. I told my parents about it a week later. They wanted to pick me up as soon as possible, even though finals were coming up. After I was finished, though, I went back home and the messages had stopped for a while. I didn't see anything from We Are One Forever for the second semester of college. The police are still trying to find out the perpetrator and are currently trying to contact the makers of Snapchat to retrieve those terrifying pictures. At that time, my life was going back to normal. And yeah, I was still using Snapchat for the innocent fun of it. The last days of the semester, though, became a different story altogether. It was a typical Friday, and I was home alone, watching TV and chowing down on snacks. I just completed the last of my finals, so I was treating myself after all that stress from college, and especially from that slightly traumatizing situation. But that all changed once my phone began to vibrate. This whole wave of dizziness took over me as I read what was on the screen. We Are One Forever sent you a message. I was conflicted with what to do at the moment, and maybe I shouldn't have opened the message. Maybe I should have just deleted Snapchat from my phone and saved myself the trouble, because when I did open the message, I was clearly met with the image of my house in broad daylight. Not just my whole house, but specifically the view of the kitchen window. The picture only lasted for 5 seconds, and it was kinda hard to see due to its grainy quality, yet it was noticeable enough to detect my own self sitting by the table, eating my cereal in the morning, looking outside the window at what I remembered to be particularly nothing at all.
I recently received a friend request that reminded me of this story, so I'm going to share it here. This happened after I went to university, so I was 18. I had really made an effort to make new friends after I moved onto campus, and I ended up with a few groups to hang out with, including a new girlfriend and plenty of people from my classes that I liked well enough. There was one class right before lunch where it was traditional for people to go to the cafeteria afterwards to eat in pairs of 3s. I wasn't very discerning about who I'd have lunch with because I got on fine with most people from the class, and we were all trying to make an effort to be social. So when one girl, Lily, asked if I wanted to eat lunch together after that class, I didn't have any reason not to go. We kinda just talked about school and that kind of thing. Nothing really noteworthy, but she did ask me to get lunch with her again the next week. It became a pattern and there wasn't exactly a way to start saying no suddenly. It was fine, but it did mean that I lost the chance to eat lunch with anyone else on those days. In hindsight, I suppose that was the point. One day while in class, I had asked someone if I could add them on social media. This happened right in front of Lily. I saw her face jerk towards me from a couple of seats over. It was such a sharp reaction that it was really hard to ignore, and I still remember it. By the time I got home later that day, Lily had sent me a friend request. No friends in common. I really don't know how she knew my last name. I was a bit surprised, but I guess that she had just dug through the university's social media pages and found me through there or something. It gave me a bad feeling, but surely it was fine, right? She ended up messaging me a lot and also commenting on anything I posted. I told myself that she was just awkward, and we became friends, if not close. I'd known worse people. She still always got me to go eat lunch with her after our one shared class. Other than that, we had rarely spent time together in person. I saw her around sometimes, but I never went out of my way to hang out with her, so it was mostly online messaging and just seeing each other in group settings. Very coincidentally, my girlfriend was also called Lily. This was something that clearly bothered Lily. Not my girlfriend, who couldn't have found it less interesting. It was just a common name to her. Well, the other Lily had occasionally hinted that she wanted my girlfriend to pick a different name, or joked about her not suiting it. She very clearly didn't like my girlfriend at all, and I had no idea why. It was kind of hard to ignore by this point. Lily was starting to unsubtly hint that she had a crush on me. I tried not to address it because what was I going to say to that? I've never really known what to do when a friend makes a pass at me, and I was also not interested in the least. Even ignoring the weird stuff that she pulled, Lily wasn't my type at all. She tended to dress and act in a way somewhere between a 50s housewife and one of those adults who's still obsessed with Disney princesses, if you can picture that. Things took a really uncomfortable turn on the day of our last shared class of the year. Instead of asking me to lunch like she usually did, Lily had asked me if I'd go for a walk with her. Once again, I didn't really know exactly how to refuse it, so I said okay. Our campus was bordered by a large patch of woodland. Lily led me into the woods, and the sounds of our fellow students slowly faded away. She sat down on a log, and I joined her. She started talking about how she was going to miss me over the summer. I tried placating her, but I didn't want to be there, especially because she seemed almost on the verge of tears. I think I tried to make an excuse about having plans with my girlfriend, but before I could leave, Lily chose to kiss me without warning. It was uncomfortable to say the least. I got out of there and I was happy to think I wouldn't see her for a while. I came back to university after the summer, moving into a house with my friends. Without going off topic, there were some serious issues in my friend group. A lot of petty arguing and worse. I broke up with my girlfriend at the start of that school year as well, and basically the whole mess made me recontextualize things with Lily because it suddenly didn't seem as bad now. That being said, I didn't want to be alone with her. We mostly just talked online. She was still constantly messaging me after all. One upside of everything was that I started dating a boy. Well, Lily wasn't too pleased to hear that news. I think she hoped to sneak in after I broke up with my girlfriend. But as I said before, that was never going to happen. There wasn't a big gap between my breakup and this new relationship, so she must have thought she missed her chance to be with me. This is where the story gets bad. Around this time, I was fairly active on Tumblr. I occasionally talked about my life and mostly reblogged photos and stuff. I was on there one day when something really odd happened. One of the blogs I followed had received an ask with some phrases I recognized. It took a second to register that it was taken from my About page. That made me freeze. I read the message properly. Someone was asking this completely random person to analyze a section of text from my page, asking for their opinion on the type of person who would write it. I can't stress enough how messed up it was to see people talking about me like I was a character in a book or something that they were trying to study. The reply was basically, "I don't know, sorry," But the important thing was that the question hadn't been anonymous. It was linked to someone's blog. Obviously, I really wanted to know who had taken such a bizarre interest in me. As far as I knew, no one in real life other than my boyfriend knew about my page. Well, no prizes for guessing who was behind it. What I found was like a shrine. She was using a fake name, but I recognized Lily all over that thing. It was this cutesy pink and red page. There were a few posts about her interests, but most of the content was focused on her primary interest. Me. Most of the posts were all about me. There were all the accounts of things that I had done recently. He told me about such and such, he went to a nightclub recently, etc., as well as references to things from as far back as I'd known her. It was clear she'd been keeping tabs on me, both online and offline, gathering up every scrap of information she could find about my life and then hoarding it here in her collection. She talked about us eating lunch together and how special her dates had been to her, as if it was anything more than just acquaintances getting food after class. She talked about the time where she had forcibly kissed me in the woods, but she wrote it as if it had been mutual. She quoted lyrics from my favorite song and talked about how she'd always be there for me, no matter who else came into my life. There were lots of references to loving me just the way he is, which answered another mystery about an anonymous love letter that I'd received earlier that year with the same wording. It got even worse. There were a lot of posts about my boyfriend as well. These weren't so nice. They got vicious, talking about how he didn't deserve me and he didn't know what he had, that if she was with me she'd be jealous of anyone else who came near me, so my boyfriend not being a jealous person meant he didn't love me. It was really angry and hateful. I didn't like to think about the sort of person who could write so obsessively, being fixated on me. One thing that didn't make sense at first was that the blog was also made of plenty of references to Lily's best friend, Steven. She had never mentioned this person to me. Her post had really talked a lot about Steven. Things like how great of a friend he was, how much fun they had together, how he looked out for her, etc. I was trying to work out whether this was an online friend, when one specific post made it all click. She had posted a photo and captioned it with, "Steven sent this to me. He knew that I would like it and love it," or something like that. The problem was, the photo was taken from my own page. I hadn't sent it to her. She took it from my own page and then claimed this fictional best friend of hers shared it with her, because in her head, she'd split me into two people. In her messed up fantasy life, I was both the perfect best friend who was always looking out for her, as well as her soulmate who was bound to end up with her when I finally got over my boyfriend and all the other easy girls that I hung out with that she made dozens of posts complaining about. Who was she complaining to, you might ask? Oh, Lily had an audience. She asked open questions about me and her relationship with me, and actually got messages back from her followers. People who took what she said at face value. I saw a bunch of random people agreeing with this stalker that my boyfriend didn't deserve me, and that we were bound to break up soon so I could be with Lily, the person I was clearly supposed to be with. She had this fake fanfiction version of my life up for anyone to share their opinion on, and she had made herself out to be the hero of it all. I went maybe a month back into this page's history. I didn't look at everything that was there. It was just way too much, so I'm not really sure how long this had been going on. I sent Lily a message confronting her all about the blog. She said nothing. I really can't stress how weird it was to have found pages and pages dedicated to me, with her talking about how she was in love with me and would make absolutely sure we ended up together, slamming my boyfriend and building a fantasy life with two different versions of me in it that she clearly believed to be real, then acting like it hadn't happened. She said nothing. She didn't address it, she just changed the subject. Even after I pushed, it was like she hadn't even registered what I said. I've never seen anything else like it in my life. She deleted the page, of course, or at least changed the name and hid it so that I never found it again. It wasn't the end, though. I wasn't going to hang out with her anymore, but we were still shoved together in classes, and she had started to actually scare me with what she might do next. I'm kind of a paranoid person. Knowing someone was obsessively keeping track of me for who knows how long really freaked me out. The next thing she pulled was trying to seduce my boyfriend. It was an absolutely useless attempt that really only made him uncomfortable. He told me all about it right away. What was her plan there? Did she hope to tell me that he cheated and wait for me to break up with him? Why the hell would I want her after that? Well, when that didn't work out for her, she then tried hitting on 3 of my other friends. None of them took the bait. She ended up dating one of my former housemates for a while, but she made sure to send me messages while they were together, letting me know that she'd rather be with me. Yeah, no thanks. Lily made sure to stay in my life the whole time I was at university. There was actually a time when I tried to pull away from her, and she ended up starting rumors about me and damaging a career opportunity that I'd put a lot of work into. I don't know what else she did behind my back, but it really made me realize that it was safer to let her think that she was a part of my life, all while ignoring her, rather than doing something that would cause her to get angry. After I graduated, Lily still wanted to spend time together, but I knew I didn't have to now. I made excuses about work, and I barely even talked to her after that point. I almost entirely stopped posting on social media that I knew she knew about. Of course, she didn't give up that easily. She tried to start conversations, asking me to meet up with her, attempts that I usually ignored. I really didn't like to think that she was still tracking me online, but she probably was. I don't know how, but she'd occasionally reference things that I mentioned online somewhere that she definitely shouldn't have known about. The last time we had a real conversation, she had sent me a message out of nowhere. We hadn't spoken at all in months, and we hadn't talked about anything serious in even much longer than that. Thinking about that conversation still makes my skin crawl, but I'll summarize what happened. At first, she asked me some questions about how long had I known I was queer. I just told her some basic stuff, the kind of thing that I'd tell anyone who asked. Then she changed the subject. She then started talking about how I would feel about her if she was a boy, about wanting to be a boy for me. The messages then quickly became fetishistic. She went into plenty of detail about fantasies she had about the two of us. Again, we weren't even friends at this point. We'd never been especially close, at least not from my perspective, and we had barely spoken for years. I really can't imagine sending messages like that to even a close friend, let alone someone who barely knows you. I tried telling her not to be pulling this crap with me, but she decided to change tactics. She had sent photos of herself followed by a bunch of messages, basically quoting back to me what I'd told her about myself and my past from earlier. She was telling me these things as if they had happened to her. She was literally role-playing as me. The worst part was that she actually seemed to believe that it was real, that those things had actually happened to her, even when she was quoting me word for word. Things that I told her only hours before were now apparently her life. It was like she was trying to absorb my history or something to take it over, to make my own life part of hers. Yeah, I didn't talk to her again after that. I ignored all future attempts she made to talk to me, and I eventually even silently deleted her from all the inactive social media, which was her only real way of contacting me. I really did think that she might finally move on. Well, a few days ago she had sent me a friend request. It's sitting there unanswered because I know if I delete it, she'll just send another one. Lily and I met nearly 12 years ago. This story is just the highlights, and even then, it's only the stuff I know about for sure. A lot of it happened behind my back. I know it did. So girl who spent 12 years obsessing over me, fetishizing me, stalking me, and harassing me, I really hope to never hear from you again. The sick and twisted fantasy life you built for me for the two of us in your head is the only place you'll be seeing me anytime soon.
Let me set the scene. The year is 1998, and the Euro is created. I was of the age of 14, sitting on my parents' desktop PC, using god-awful dial-up internet to research the history of William the Conqueror's harrying of the North, when my friend, who for the purposes of this story shall be called Jake, messaged me on IRC. Hey, some dude at school told me something really cool you can do on your PC. What? I asked. 1. Open up Start. 2. Go to run. 3. Enter 2ndrely2.frt. 4. Tell me when you're done. I did what he told me. What opened up looked like some type of command prompt. It had 2 boxes that text should be entered into, and a regular command line. Done, I informed him. In the box, write your name. In the second, write a password. And in the other bit, write rtile.oh.us. I did exactly what I was told, and a box telling me to enter a nickname popped up. I wrote Tom Elton. The window closed. A few moments later, a batch file opened that said, "Welcome to the Rtile, Ohio chat room. User Tom Elton has joined." I spent the next few months talking to my friends on that chat room. I had no idea who created it or hosted it. It seemed to only work in the Rtile, Ohio area, meaning I could talk to anyone there in theory. The only people who were there was me, Jake, and a couple of other people I was friends with. Someone from the preparatory school across town, and once, somebody who claimed to work for the insurance company's tech support, who left after the only response he got was, "What school you at?" I don't know why we used this instead of a normal chat room. Maybe the whole secret gathering aspect of it made us more drawn to it. I don't know for sure. I woke up one fall morning and checked the chat room and found out that I had been promoted to an administrator. I had no idea who did it, but I got to brag to my friends for the next few days and change what people were typing to make them look dumb. But other than that, my powers went unused, until one day I logged on to see that the anonymous messages to admins was not empty for a change. I wish I didn't check to see what was there. It was a full story from a user called 09HDI7RF, written in multiple single-sentence messages. They described how they were being physically abused by their parents, how they weren't allowed to go outside the house, and how she snuck into her dad's computer and saw this chat room open, and decided to tell anybody she could. I responded with, "Who is this? Also, if this was real, you would have called the cops." Later that day, the chat room stopped working. I couldn't get it to work at all. I got an error message every time I searched the command on my PC's run feature. I was royally pissed off with the fact that me and my friend's secret hidey hole was now dead. 2 days later, what do I see in the news? Girl shot dead by her father after breaking out of her home through a window. The mother was in police custody, but the father was never caught. The family's PC contains documents describing kids named Jake, Tom, and others, describing what he imagined their appearance to be, and what he would do to them if he ever found them, which was too horrific to describe here. That man was never caught, to my knowledge. He is still on the run today, hiding amongst everyone. I'm certain that he will never be caught.
Stephen Nicholson's arrest as the main suspect in a violent, indecent assault and murder sparked off one of the UK's biggest evidence searches, which involved a trawl of thousands of hours of CCTV footage. He was the prime suspect in the murder of Lucy McHugh, and actually rented a room in her parents' home at the time of her murder. At one point, it looked like the British police might actually have to let him go due to lack of evidence, but in the end, it was a Facebook password that proved to be his ultimate undoing. After he was arrested, the police had just 96 hours to charge him with the murder, or he would have to be released. And given that it would take 4 weeks to get a key piece of DNA evidence analyzed and sent back to them, the clock was ticking to find something concrete that they could use to charge him with murder. The police subjected Stephen to vigorous questioning and managed to get him to admit that Lucy had sent him a Facebook message on the night before she was killed. When pressed as to what that message said, he said she told him she was pregnant with his child. He intended this to be evidence that it couldn't possibly have been him that killed her, but when police asked him to hand over his Facebook password so that they could verify his claims, he refused to give it to them. This was his one big mistake. When asked why he refused to share the password with them, Stephen told officers that he was involved quite heavily with some narcotics dealers around his hometown, and that revealing his messages would compromise them, possibly even causing them to take reprisals against him. But this didn't wash with investigating officers, who became convinced that the information contained within the account could be used against him. It also presented them with a marvelous opportunity. There were two options available to them, one being to seek the compliance of U.S. federal courts to get Facebook to hand over Stephen's passwords to them, but that would have taken way longer than just 96 hours, and by that time, Stephen would be freed. But the other was to make use of some terrorism legislation, what is known as Section 53 of the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, colloquially called RIPA among police officers. This means that anyone who seeks to withhold information, such as computer passwords, during a serious crime investigation can basically be charged with obstruction of justice. Right when it looked like Stephen was going to be bailed, he was rearrested, and after pleading guilty to withholding evidence at Southampton Crown Court, he was jailed for 14 months. With that, the police managed to buy themselves more time to find evidence of his involvement in Lucy McHugh's murder. However, while there was plenty of circumstantial evidence that Stephen had killed Lucy, there was nothing to physically link the spot where Lucy's body was found to Nicholson. Whatever weapon he used to kill her remained unaccounted for, and police officers were unable to find any of his DNA at the scene. Once again, investigators were forced to focus on Stephen's so-called online footprint, this time seeking help from an experienced cloud data analyst to try to link Stephen to the scene of the crime. A cloud data analyst's job is to study various pieces of digital information sent from Nicholson's phone to data servers, which are owned by companies such as Google and Facebook. While tracing the phone's route on the day of Lucy's murder, the analyst happened to notice a small blip in an area of Southampton that the police had not yet searched. It suggested that Nicholson had, for whatever reason, deviated from his most direct route home. The diversion took him to a place known as Tanner's Brook, a stream which meanders through Southampton, weaving its way through some pretty dense woodland in the western portion of the city. Detective Superintendent Paul Barton later said to journalists, "With the help of the analyst, what we discovered was a slight deviation on his telephone, which didn't match the story he'd given us. You could say it had jumped a mast, so to speak, and therefore put Stephen at the place where we discovered some bloody, discarded clothing. It was a great bit of work from the analyst who pointed it out." The subtle shift in the narrative given by the killer was enough for police to launch one of the largest ever fingertip searches, which involved almost 200 officers from 12 other police forces. By that point, it had been 4 weeks since Lucy's dead body was found, but on the first day of the search, police got the exact kind of breakthrough that they had been hoping for. They found a discarded plastic bag containing a blue bloodstained hoodie, along with a number of other items that were described in court as Nicholson's murder kit. The blue hoodie contained Nicholson's DNA, as well as Lucy's blood, with Stephen being thought to have dumped the clothing, some of which had been partially burnt, near the brook after getting changed on his return from the murder scene on July 25th. Prior to the discovery of the clothing, police had no other direct evidence of Nichols' involvement in her killing. They had tested fibers from every bloodstained jacket and Stephen's clothes, which suggested direct contact with the hoodie, but that simply wasn't enough to actually charge him with a crime. Homicide detectives had already established that hoodies of the same type were sold to 2 people in the Southampton area, and that one of them was given a present to a man who knew a friend of Stephen's. The DNA evidence was the final nail in the coffin for Nicholson, according to Detective Superintendent Barton. During the course of the investigation, police officers had studied 11,000 hours of CCTV footage, examined over 2,000 pieces of physical evidence, and taken more than 300 written reports. A Herculean amount of work had given them a strong circumstantial case, but in the end, genetic evidence was what the police really needed to prove that Stephen was Lucy's killer. But had Stephen not been jailed over refusing to hand over his Facebook password, the outcome could have been very, very different. The 14-month jail sentence not only bought the police a great deal of time, but it also potentially stopped Stephen from going back to Tanner's Brook to move the evidence he had dumped there. And it's frankly astounding that the killer of a child might well be walking the streets right now if it wasn't for something as simple as a Facebook password. Public prosecutors were eventually granted access to Stephen's Facebook account on the first day of his murder trial. but found that he had deleted most of his messages before he was arrested. As it turned out, it didn't matter in the least bit if Stephen gave them the password. He still wouldn't be able to be charged based on the absence of the messages. If he'd only gone and given police the password, he might still be free to walk the streets. One of the prosecutors, a Mr. Montague, criticized the protracted process, saying that for him, the personal side, the human side, is we have a 13-year-old child that has been murdered under ferocious circumstances. And for me, it's somewhat frustrating that Facebook seems so unwilling to help with our investigation by recovering deleted messages. Facebook said it had worked closely with the investigating officers, but that they agree that this legal process can be far too slow. We have actively lobbied for reforms to EU, US, and UK laws to allow us and others to directly and more quickly provide information to UK law enforcement authorities, a spokeswoman for the company said. But despite the slow process, police have been able to build a case against an extremely narcissistic, self-centered, violent predator who had torn apart a family kind enough to put a roof over his head when they could have easily turned him away. He preyed on their underage daughter, and when it looked like she might actually tell on him, he killed her. But at no point could he have expected that something as seemingly insignificant as his Facebook password would actually be the thing to put him behind bars. On the morning of April 12, 2018, 27-year-old Renita Williams of Shreveport, Louisiana was at home minding her own business. She lived at home with her mother, Anita, and had just broken up with her long-term boyfriend, Jonathan Robinson. Like many relationships, the breakup had been a messy one, and a great deal of drama had unfolded on social media websites, mainly the most popular of them, Facebook. Apparently, Jonathan had moved on rather quickly from Renita and had recently started dating a woman from Houston, Texas named Sharika Taylor. And although it's not entirely clear what the ins and outs of the social media drama were, there had definitely been some exchange between the two women that had seriously enraged Jonathan Robinson. As foolish as it often is, men sometimes attempt to defend the honor of the women in their lives, but no one could have expected Jonathan to take such extreme measures in what amounted to little more than an exchange of harsh words. Because before Jonathan pulled up to Renita's place on the morning of April 12th, he had just driven by his aunt's house to retrieve something he'd previously hidden in the basement of her home, a high-caliber, semi-automatic rifle. He was so delirious with anger that he didn't even bother to turn off the engine of the vehicle he'd driven up in. He simply grabbed the rifle from the passenger seat, kicked in the dead-bolted front door to the house, and then started shooting. It seems those first few shots were merely to terrify those in the home, because no one was actually hurt during the first few minutes of the attack. Whilst her mother and younger brother escaped from the rear of the home, Jonathan quickly located a terrified Renita, who believed she was about to be immediately executed, but apparently her ex-boyfriend had other plans for her first. Keeping her at gunpoint, he told her to grab her cell phone and begin a Facebook Live broadcast. At first, Renita had no idea why she would need to do something like that, but all slowly became clear when Jonathan began to demand she apologize to Taylor, his new girlfriend. In a terrifying public display of humiliation, Jonathan could be seen pointing the barrel of his rifle at the mother of three's head while he made her apologize over and over again for the perceived offense. She was terrified, voice quivering as she complied. Meanwhile, Renita's mother was hiding in the backyard, having had the foresight to grab her cell phone before fleeing from the gunshots. With shaking hands, she hammered 911 onto her phone's touchscreen, then begged the dispatcher to send help in a hushed but terrified tone. Yet the police were far closer than she could have imagined, because Officer Brittany Mackey was actually within earshot of the gunfire. As soon as she heard the shots, she rolled up to St. Vincent Avenue at Natalie Street and got out of her vehicle with her pistol drawn. Jonathan Robinson looked up to see the cops arrive mere minutes after he'd burst into the home, and he was seething with rage. He immediately executed Renita as she kneeled on the floor below him, then walked out of the busted front door and began shooting at Officer Mackey. Using trees and parked vehicles as cover, Jonathan sent round after round of high-caliber rifle fire into the officer's patrol car, forcing her into cover. Mackie immediately got onto her radio and began calling in backup, with her colleagues actually hearing the sound of gunfire over the airwaves. She then got as low behind the back wheel of her patrol car as she possibly could, and prayed for swift reinforcements. Just 2 minutes later, that backup arrived in the form of Corporals Joshua Pettigrew and Greg Walker. They screeched up the street, coming to a stop just short of Officer Mackey's patrol car. The officers then jumped out of the vehicle, took cover behind the open doors, and sent a torrent of .45 caliber pistol bullets at Jonathan's firing position. The overwhelming firepower pushed him back into the house, and the two corporals lost track of their target. The next two cops on the scene were two special response team members, Corporals Landry Ducto and Michael Gerbine. The pair took off running for the other side of the street, but Jonathan opened fire once again, this time from a vantage point on the second floor of the house he was occupying. The air around them cracked and whizzed with .7.62 bullets, ricocheting off the concrete as they narrowly missed their targets. But luckily, neither officer was wounded. He's in a sniper position, another officer can be heard screaming on a police cruiser's dash cam. Get down. Robinson had the supreme advantage of a concealed elevated position coupled with high-caliber weaponry, and for almost an hour, he kept every officer pinned down and unable to approach his position. They were so heavily outgunned that the only two shots that managed to fire were to disable the car Robinson left running in the driveway when he barged into the Williams home. Plus, the police had no idea where he was even shooting from, and couldn't risk civilian casualties by peppering the entire home with bullets. To the officers pinned down at the scene, waiting for a full special response team to arrive seemed like an eternity. Eventually, a full police SWAT team was pushing up towards the house, preparing to breach and clear the entire structure to locate and eliminate the active shooter. Yet just as the team was cleared to breach, Jonathan indicates to those on scene that he wished to surrender. They hesitated and fell right into his trap. He opened fire on them first and sent a bullet smashing through SRT operative Robert Entrikin's right wrist. "I've been hit," Entrikin cried over his radio. "Officer hit." Another torrent of bullets are exchanged for a few moments before a sudden lull in the volume of fire. Then, to the surprise of the attending officers, Jonathan appeared to walk out of the busted front door again, only this time he was unarmed, and he proceeded to lie down on the front lawn of the house in a show of surrender. The SR team rushed in, putting cuffs on the shooter before dragging him away. Renita's mother and brother are led away from the scene safely, but heartbreakingly, Renita had succumbed to her wounds before the EMTs could get to her. At his murder trial, Jonathan Robinson pled guilty to first-degree murder and admitted to investigators that he fired on police officers because he wanted to die. He narrowly escaped the death penalty by agreeing to a plea deal presented to him by prosecutors and was later sentenced to life in prison. 100 years ago, a person would have to drag another into a busy street to perform a public execution. But nowadays, all it takes is a few button clicks on a cell phone to have all your family and friends watching as you're executed in cold blood by some deranged killer. And such incidents can happen so fast that there's simply no way of preemptively or actively censoring them, no matter how hard Facebook might try. As long as there's a technology available that allows us to share all the intimate details of our lives, humanity seems to relish in sharing not just the good and positive, but also the darker, more terrifying things too.
This story happened back when I was in college. Like many college guys, I used Snapchat quite a bit. I had probably over 1,000 Snapchat friends and would communicate with most of my friends through the app. I got to know a lot of my classmates better through snapping them or having snap streaks. Anyways, to get to the story, it all started one night when I was studying in my bedroom. I lived in a house with two roommates who were some good friends that I had made my freshman year. I had my own bedroom upstairs in the house, and so did each of my roommates. When I study, I tend to get distracted by my phone quite a bit, and when I looked at it on my desk, I saw somebody had added me on Snapchat. It was a girl named Kaylee. Her username didn't have a last name in it, just a bunch of numbers, so I wasn't quite sure who she was, but I figured that she went to my school, which is pretty large. I added her back, and I snapped her a picture of my face saying hi. She snapped me back, and she appeared to be around my age. We snapped back and forth for the rest of the night, and she told me that she also went to my university. The next night, I found myself home alone and bored. Both of my roommates went to their intramural sports games, and I had stayed home with an assignment, but I finished much earlier than I thought I would. I was still snapping Kaylee, and I told her about my situation. That's when she asked if I wanted her to come over. I really hadn't expected that, and I would have expected her to want to meet in a public place, or at least snap a few days before meeting, but I was cool with it. Kaylee asked me for my address, and I gave it to her. Both me and her were both on the snap map, and it appeared that she lived on the other side of campus. Kaylee snapped me that she was leaving and would be at my place shortly. I went down and attempted to clean up the house a little bit. About 15 minutes later, there was a knock at the front door. I walked downstairs, expecting to see Kaylee, but instead saw some guy. There was a guy with a jacket and winter hat standing at the front door. I was really confused. I opened up the door crack and asked what the guy wanted. He told me that he was Kaylee's friend and had given her a ride to my house. He told me that Kaylee was in the car down the street, but he wanted to make sure it was safe and I wasn't some crazy person. He told me that he was just trying to look out for her and asked if he could come inside and look around. I was really weirded out by this. It caught me by surprise, and I told the guy to give me a second, and then I closed the door. I checked the snap map, and it showed Kaylee as being literally right outside of my front door, right where the guy was standing. I knew this wasn't right. I snapped Kaylee, asking who the guy was. She began typing quickly, and as she was typing, I looked outside and saw the guy typing on his phone. Eventually, she sent me a chat, and it said basically the same thing that the guy had said. The guy then knocked on the door again. I yelled from the other side for the guy to just leave, and I wasn't falling for his tricks. I then watched him walk away, and thankfully, he left. About 20 minutes later, I got a snap from Kaylee. I opened it to see a picture of the guy flipping me off. I opened it, but didn't respond. A short time later, I got another snap. This one was of the same guy saying, "You still fell for a fake girl, you effing idiot." I then blocked the account. He was right in the fact that I had fallen for a fake girl, but I had seen pictures of her and wondered how he had done it. After some research though, I learned that the guy probably got some type of app that allows you to send pictures of snaps of whatever you want without it appearing as an uploaded photo. It's complicated, but not too hard to figure out. All the guy needed was multiple selfies of the same girl. I had noticed that her selfie style was a little different, but I looked past it. This whole thing was kind of embarrassing for me, but I'm just happy to say that I'm okay.
I'm a female and have an Instagram account like many other people. I post pictures on my page here and there, and I always enjoy seeing how many likes and comments that my pictures get. Most of the comments and likes are from my good friends, but of course, not all of them are. Like many other people, I've experienced several creeps online. Sometimes random men will like my pictures, comment on them, or even send me direct messages. They can get kind of creepy, and sometimes I even delete them. For the most part though, I don't really care. It happens here and there and doesn't bother me. I remember though, one time, about a year ago, I posted a picture on Instagram and some guy liked it and commented on it. I read the comment, but didn't bother to click on his profile or anything. I did not know him, but he commented something like, "Very nice," with a fire emoji. But not long after this, he sent me a direct message as well. He simply said hi to me, but I had no interest in responding. I did click on his page though to see who he was. He looked much older than me, and only had a few pictures. I had no idea who he was, and we didn't have any mutual followers, so I ignored him. I've gotten many direct messages from people who I don't know, and most of the time, I don't respond to them. They usually get the idea and leave me alone after I don't reply. I figured this would be no different, but the man sent me another direct message the next day. This one I also ignored. I didn't even open it. Over the next few days, he sent several more messages to me. I didn't bother to read any of them, and I figured eventually the man would give up, but he didn't. Over the next week or so, he sent me messages basically every single day. I would get Instagram notifications several times a day, and at least one of them would be from the man sending me another message. Eventually, I got tired of it and decided to finally block the guy. But before I did, I wanted to read through the messages that he sent me. Right away, I saw that he had sent a photo, and it was my house. I realized that this was no ordinary creep. This man must live in the area, and he somehow knew where I lived. I looked at the other messages that he sent me. He said hi to me over and over again, and then blatantly told me that he knew where I lived. That was followed by a picture of my house and then him saying hi to me again. I wasn't quite sure what to do. I reported his account to Instagram and then blocked him. However, I wasn't really confident that anything would be done. I didn't think this was worth going to the police either, because I didn't think that the man had broken any laws. Still, I was now very worried. What was this man capable of? I found myself looking out my front window almost constantly for the rest of the day. I lived by myself in a 2-story home near a major US city. For the rest of that day, I did not have to go anywhere, and I did my best to stop worrying. I called several of my friends and spoke with them about it. Unfortunately, none of them could come over and keep me company that night because they were either working or had prior plans. I started to feel better when nothing strange happened for a few hours. But then, nighttime came. At around 10 p.m., I was in my living room watching a movie on my TV. By now, my windows were covered with the shades, and I wasn't thinking about the guy as much. My phone hadn't received any strange Instagram notifications either. Part of me had been worried that the man would make another Instagram account and message me again, but that didn't happen. At one point during the movie, I randomly remembered and had the thought to check out the window again. It had been several hours since I had last checked. I turned behind me on the couch and carefully lifted the blinds back. That's when I saw a car parked right out front on the street that I did not recognize. Could that be him? With it being dark out and stuff, obviously I couldn't tell who was driving, but I could tell that there was a person in the driver's seat. I quickly covered the window back up and wondered if the person had seen me. I sat there on the couch for a few moments, thinking of what I should do. Then I heard a car door open and shut. The person was getting out. I carefully moved the window shades again, just barely, just enough to see out. I saw a man walking towards the house through my front yard. This was definitely him. He walked up closer to the house, and I heard him moving just outside of my window. I couldn't believe that this was happening. I really hoped that he would not try to break in. I heard him walking further down to behind the house. This time, I was calling the police for sure. I took out my phone and dialed. I stayed where I was on the couch and spoke with the police as I waited for them to arrive. During this time, I didn't hear or see anything indicating where the man was. Several minutes later, though, I heard a car door open and shut again outside. I was hoping that it was the police arriving, and I looked outside, but instead, I saw it was the man driving away. I was so glad that he was gone, but I also knew that the police would not be able to catch him right away now. They arrived about 5 minutes later. I told them about the man leaving, and gave the best description of him and the car that I could, but I didn't get a very good look at either. I still didn't feel that confident about him being located. I gave the police the whole story, but I had blocked the account, and when I looked at accounts that I had blocked, it must have been deleted because it was gone. After the police left, I was still very worried. I decided that I would stay at one of my friends' houses for the next few days. This was a big help to me because I knew that the man still knew where I lived and he might return. The very next night, I got a direct message request from a random Instagram account. The username was user and then a bunch of random numbers, and it had no profile picture. They sent me just a photograph, and it was of my bedroom window. It was taken from my yard. That must have been what he was doing. I showed the picture to my friend, and we went to the police with it, but I don't know that there was much they could do. The account had no pictures or any information on it. They did say that they would investigate, though. Several days went by without anything happening. I decided that I would return to my house. I drove back there in the morning, but when I got there, I noticed that it had been broken into. The window to the back door had been smashed. I called the police immediately and ran back outside to my car in fear that the man was still inside my house. They arrived very quickly and entered my house. They were inside for a while, but soon they came out with the man. He had been hiding inside of my house. I guess he had broken in the previous night and was waiting for me to return. I'm so glad that he was caught, and I will never forget that experience.
This all started so innocuously. I'm an actor and physique bodybuilder trying to make it into jobs into modeling and acting. The time this was going on, I couldn't find any work in the field. I had just gotten done with a toxic working relationship with my last modeling coach, and I was just really eager to find some kind of work to do. I was browsing my Instagram when I had noticed a guy post on one of my videos saying that I was handsome and that he actually might have a job available for me. I was at the gym at the time and set in my mind to do so when I got back home. When I first started talking with this guy, things started off really well, but then some warning bells started going off. He wanted me to star in a parody version of a certain action movie, But when I asked him which production company was backing this, he said,
"We'll let you know that once you've signed with us."
Well, I knew from acting classes that you should never sign with someone who can't or won't tell you about their production company in such a way like this. I then refused to be involved with them, and I told him I wasn't interested. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. It was about a week or two later when I noticed the fake accounts. They were made by some guy spreading all these outrageous rumors about me, saying that I was gay and in a relationship with the same guy who I rejected, and the two had full-on psycho conversations with each other, trying to make it seem like this fake account was really me. I reported the account to Instagram, and before long it was gone, only for 2 more to then pop up. The guy now seemed angrier. He started openly insulting me in the fake profiles, and also insulting anyone I seemed to like or respect. This went on for some time, me reporting his fake slanderous profiles of me, and him just making more. It got worse and worse. He would insult all my friends and claim that I hated black people, Asian people, and so on. He even claimed once that I planned on sleeping with the wife of one of my good friends. That was really the last straw. I sent him an angry message on one of his latest accounts telling him to fuck off and that he's not me, and that I'll smack down as many of his creepy stalker accounts as possible, and that I would never work with him or like him. This seemed to quiet things down for a while. Little did I know that he was moving from Instagram to fake Facebook and Twitter handles in my name. I was just relaxing after my day job one day, nothing really going on, and I got a phone call. I answered it, not knowing who it was. It was my hometown's police department, letting me know that I had apparently said some really disturbing things online, on Twitter specifically. That couldn't be. I didn't even have a Twitter. I went outside to meet the cops, and they said that someone using my name had actually announced that I would live stream my suicide on social media. They checked in to see if I was okay, and I then explained to the cops all that had been happening. Apparently some of my old gym friends noticed what was going on, and then notified the cops. Having had this happen, I really couldn't help but wonder. I knew who was responsible, I knew why, but the involvement of the police made me think. Maybe he hoped to make the police crash into my house and possibly kill me in the ensuing chaos, purely because I refused to be involved with him romantically. On the advice of the cops, I set most of my social media to private and shut down all the other accounts, and this seemed to do it. The fake accounts finally stopped showing up. He did try several more times to frame me, using accounts with no pictures to gain access, whereupon he would spread rumors that I was a racist or homophobe. But the occasion this happened, I was contacted by a guy who let me know what was going on. I realized who was responsible, and from then on, I would never accept Instagram follow requests. I haven't heard anything from the stalker since. Though even today, with all of this mostly over, whenever I see an Instagram follow request with no profile picture, I still find myself thinking maybe this is him trying to access me again, also he can continue the stalking. Whenever the whole COVID thing is over, I really hope that I can go back to my gym without any trouble. And for his sake, I really hope he keeps socially distanced from me. And I mean forever. About 4 months ago, we moved into a new house out in the country. Since we previously lived in an apartment, that means that we needed to buy a new lawnmower. Instead of putting out $200 on a brand new lawnmower when we'd probably just have to move again in a couple of years, we decided instead to hire someone to cut our grass for us. We initially went with a guy that my fiance used to work with, but $65 every 2 weeks, well, starts to add up, and I was really looking for something cheaper. That brings me to Charles. Charles had posted in my Facebook classified that he was looking for some lawns that he could cut this weekend, and he had a reputable company, or so I thought. So I decided to send him a message on Facebook. Now, initially, Charles came off as pretty nice to me. He asked me for my address so that he could stop by and give me an estimate. After stopping by my house, he sent me a message that said,
"Damn, sweetheart, you got a big-ass porch.
It made me kind of uncomfortable, but I figured I was just overreacting, and I started planning when he could come out. I told him the days that I was off from work, but he assured me that I didn't have to be there when he would do the work. I told him the best time would probably be on a Wednesday. Wednesday morning, he messaged me.
Are you home?
I said no. 3 hours later,
Are you home yet?
I told him no yet again and that I won't be home until after 8. Charles then informed me that his tire had a flat and he would come tomorrow instead. Let's cut to Thursday, and first thing in the morning, he sends me a message.
Will you be home today?
I told him no. He messages me back a few hours later once again asking if I'm home. I told him, no, I told you I wouldn't be home all day. Are you still coming out? Then he tells me his truck broke down. He was sending me messages like,
Please don't be upset with me, sweetheart.
At this point, I was getting really creeped out and pretty sick of his excuses, but I told him to just come tomorrow. It's now Friday and it's actually my day off, but I woke up and I left the house for the day. He messages me.
Hey, I'm coming. You're off today, right?
I told him yes, but that I wouldn't be home.
When will you be home then?
I told him I didn't know, and he messages me later saying,
Sorry, babe. I was loading the equipment onto my truck and it then fell and broke. Maybe I can come tomorrow.
At this point, I was really creeped out and I just told him never mind and that I was going to find someone else at this point. It's now Saturday and I get off work around 4 or 5 and I check my phone and I find multiple messages from him saying that he cut my grass and that I need to come home and give him the money. I told him no and that I would just send it through Cash App. He started getting really irate with me and saying that I needed to give him the money right now. I told him that I would give him the money once I got home and actually saw that the grass was cut for myself. I'm not gonna lie, I was honestly really worried that he was gonna be waiting at my house for me, so I decided to get a friend of mine to drive home right behind me. Luckily, he wasn't there. I sent him the money and I thought that was the end of it. Fast forward 2 months later. I'm on the phone with my fiance as I drive to class and he tells me that he has to get off the phone because there's somebody walking down our driveway. I asked him what he meant and he said that there was some strange man walking around in our driveway as well as our front yard. After I got to class, he sent me a text telling me that it was some man who was just trying to promote his lawn business. Now, I didn't really think too much about this as it had been 2 months. But later that night, I then got home and I saw a business card that was laying on my counter, and it had the same exact name of the very same man who had been messaging me previously. I decided to call my fiance at work and I asked how the guy had been acting. He said that Charles seemed genuinely surprised that a man had come out and he asked if he lived alone. I then asked Mike if Charles had stopped at any of the other houses in the neighborhood, and then he replied with, You know, now that I think about it, no. After he left our house, he just left. Mike said that Charles seemed really desperate to help around the house and he actually offered to cut the lawn, fix our porch, as well as remove any trash or scrap metal we had around the house. And then he even asked if we had pests, such as bats in our attic or anything. That especially really freaked me out as we do have a bat problem, and I had previously posted about it on Facebook. So I'm guessing that's where he figured that out. Mike then said that what was really weird about Charles is how freaked out he was acting about the dog. He had heard our dog Max barking from inside and then started asking a lot of questions like,
Is he big? Does he stay inside or outside? Does he ever go outside or does he just always stay inside? How big is he? Is he nice?
Mike just chalked it up to him being scared of dogs. He gave him a brief tour of the outside of our house and then Charles got in his truck and then left. That's when I told Mike that this was the same guy who had been messaging me earlier in the year, and then Mike began to really freak out. He said that Charles had asked a lot of really specific questions about who all lived here and how long they lived here, as well as where they specifically were at the time. He said that he tried to brush them off, but Charles seemed really insistent to know if Mike was the only one in the house. Before he left though, Mike specifically asked him if he had cut the lawn here before, and that maybe he was thinking of the last owners, but Charles just told him,
No, I've never cut your grass before. I just happened to be out this way and thought I'd promote my business.
The worst part? On that day, I had taken my fiance's car to work that day, which means that mine was in the driveway when Charles stopped by, meaning that he thought I was home alone when he stopped by. I didn't contact the police because I thought that I just might be overreacting about it. This all happened about 2 days ago, but hopefully I don't hear from him again. If I do, however, I'll definitely give an update.
My name is Bree. When I went to high school, during my senior year, early on in the first semester, I remember noticing this one new kid in our school. I will call him Dave for this story. I had never seen him at our school before, and I had a history class with him. For the most part, that's all I knew of him. Beyond that, I didn't really notice him much at all. The next semester, I didn't have any classes with Dave. It was pretty early on in that second semester that one of my friends told me something shortly after I had gotten to school one day. She told me that Dave had been posting some really weird and borderline creepy Snapchat stories of me. Nobody in my friend group was friends with Dave on Snapchat, but apparently my friend had heard from a mutual friend about it. Somebody who was friends with Dave on Snapchat had seen his stories and found them really odd. When I asked for examples, I was told that he had occasionally taken photos of me in class or in the hallway without my knowledge. Other times, he would post random pictures and mention me for whatever reason. To me, this did seem pretty strange, and I felt like I should tell Dave to stop. But I knew this might be really awkward to do, or he might deny it altogether. I thought about it for a little while, but I never really saw Dave anymore anyways. I didn't have any classes with him anymore. Plus, I never saw him in the hallways in between classes either. Our school was pretty big, with about 2,000 students total. Over time, I just kind of ignored it. I figured that maybe he was a bit of a creep, or maybe he had a crush on me, but if he didn't see me anymore, he would get over it. Roughly 2 weeks after finding out about this, I was told once again by a friend that Dave had posted a weird story about me. My friend had actually befriended Dave on Snapchat to see his stories. He posted a picture of my car in the student parking lot, saying the caption, "My favorite girl's car." Obviously, I found this really weird, and I knew that I needed to ask Dave to stop. Unfortunately, I could never seem to find Dave in the hallways, and I didn't want to go out looking for him. I decided that I would just add Dave on Snapchat, just for the purpose of asking him to stop posting weird things about me. So that day, when I got home from school, I asked my friend for Dave's username, and she gave it to me. Once I added Dave, he added me back, and he immediately snapped me saying hi. I snapped him back, telling him that I was made aware of the strange things that he was posting about me, and that I needed him to stop doing so. He opened my snap, but didn't reply. Then, I deleted him. A couple of hours later, when I was in my bedroom, I suddenly heard a loud noise against my window. I had been at my desk finishing homework, which was about 5 feet from the window. I looked over to it, and there was another loud bang. This time, the window broke, and glass shattered everywhere. I jumped back and saw Dave standing right outside the window. He then started cursing at me. I was terrified. I already knew he did some creepy things, but this was really crossing the line. Then he came closer and started to crawl through the broken window. I jumped up and ran out of the room. My parents were home, but on the other side of the house in the living room. I ran over to them and was frantically screaming that somebody had broken in. Dave did not leave my bedroom, and after we called the police, he must have left because when they got there, he was gone. Thankfully, I knew exactly who he was, and he was found that same night. It was a bad idea for me to add him on Snapchat because my location was on, and I guess Dave could see exactly where I lived then. Since then, I've turned my location off, and I'm much more careful of who I add on Snapchat. Nothing else crazy like this has happened to me, though. I'm a female and in college. This all happened about 6 months ago. I've had a Snapchat since I was in middle school, and have more friends on that app than I can even count. I get added by new people all the time, and I usually accept the people who add me, but that has since changed. I would post stories occasionally when I was with friends or whatever. One time, a guy screenshotted my story who I didn't know. I didn't really think much of it though, until it happened again. When it did, I clicked on his profile, and I really had no idea who the guy was, or when we had become Snapchat friends. He didn't have a Bitmoji, so I had no idea what he looked like. I searched his name on Instagram and Facebook, but it was a pretty common name and brought back no useful results. After that, I moved on. The next time I posted a story, he screenshotted it again though. This time, I sent him a message and asked him why he always screenshotted my stories. He opened up my Snapchat a very short time later and replied with a picture. I opened it up and was extremely creeped out. It was a picture of his wall that had countless photos of me taped to it. I saw many of the photos that I had posted on Instagram and all of my recent Snapchat stories. There were also some pictures from my Facebook and basically any photo of me that was online. But it got worse. There were some photos of me on his wall that I didn't remember being taken, like just pictures of me walking. I took a screenshot of the picture that he sent me and then I blocked his account. I couldn't believe what I had seen. Then, I made my Instagram and Facebook accounts private. But that's when I realized maybe this guy was already one of my followers or friends. I searched his name on Facebook, and sure enough, we were friends. I showed his profile to my parents and told them about what had happened. That's when I learned something very creepy. They told me that he was one of our neighbors and lived just down the street. We live in a pretty large neighborhood, and I definitely didn't know all of our neighbors. I only know a few. I guess my dad had helped him snowblow his driveway a few years back. I couldn't believe it. My dad went over to talk to the guy, but he denied everything. I blocked the guy on all social media, and I hope I never see him again.
This happened last year when I was 14. There's this dating app for teenagers. I used it as more of a joke. It was connected to Snapchat, so whenever you matched with someone, you would add them to Snapchat so you could continue talking to your match. As I said, at first I was using it as a joke, but then I matched with this really good-looking guy, and I thought, well, would it hurt to try? So I accepted his request to be my friend on Snapchat. I sent a shy hi to him and waited for a response. It took him about 2 hours to respond, and the only thing he sent was a blank black picture. I didn't think too much of it, and I continued on with my day. But the next day I get a message from him, a picture of a very familiar thing. My school. It was only a little jarring, but I figured he probably went to the same school and we had just never met. Then my phone began to vibrate like crazy during a class. To give a little perspective, we have glass doors and windows. They look out into the corridors during class, and when I checked my phone, I saw maybe 15 pictures sent to me from the same guy. They were pictures of me sitting at my desk in the classroom. The pictures kept coming. They seemed to have been taken from outside that window next to the door. When I looked over, I saw someone standing there just outside that window. He had a phone in his hand and he was pointing at me. Whoever it was wearing a black hoodie. The hood covered half of his face and the other half was pale, and he had a sharp jawline. I could see thin lips curved into a grin, and I saw my friend. She was looking at him too, and her face turned red and she began to shake. We were the only ones who saw them, because as fast as we tried to say something, the figure was gone. My friend stood up from her chair and went to the door to open it. It caught my teacher's attention, and we had to explain what we were doing. We had to tell them what we saw. My teacher went out herself to look for whoever this was, and then she even told the office. They let out a message over the speakers, telling everyone to look out for this man. Ever since then, I haven't used Snapchat. It was one of the apps I used all the time before. It still creeps me out, though it may have been a joke and it must have been someone who knew me from before, but it was still horrifying. It had made me a lot more paranoid about strangers on the internet.
3 weeks ago, someone added me on Snapchat called Addergreen. I thought nothing of it at first, but then a few days later I got a bus to the gym since I couldn't be bothered to walk. It's 4 miles away, so it's alright to take the bus. Sitting at the front with my headphones in, listening to music to make the journey that less bit boring. From the bus stop to the gym, I was messing around on my phone when I noticed I had a Snapchat from Addergreen. It was only on for a few seconds, but the Snapchat was a picture of me sitting on the bus. No text, just me. It was taken from a few seats behind and shown the back of my head and some of my hoodie. I instantly knew it was me, and I felt my stomach drop. I bombarded them with Snapchats. They were opening my Snapchats but not responding. They got more aggressive because I was getting more and more pissed off. For example, "Who is this? Who are you? Answer me. For fuck's sake, just reply." You get the drift. After about a week, I got nothing, so gave up and thought one of my friends was being a dick. Then Snapchat number 2. Didn't screenshot this one either. I know I'm a moron, but I was drunk. Me and some mates were in a club in my local town, and this time someone Snapchatted to me a photo of myself at the bar. They were literally standing right next to me at the bar. I opened it the next morning and felt sick. Again, it was only for a few seconds. My friends were next to me in the photo, so that eliminated the possibility of it being one of them fucking with me. About 30 minutes ago, I got another Snapchat. This time I was ready and sober enough to take a screenshot. I've been indoors all day. I was curious what it was. That is my house, my bedroom window, and my name. I received this as I was lying next to my window on my bed watching Game of Thrones. I feel sick. Their Snapchat stories are equally as fucked up. Update number 1. I sent them a snap saying, "Are you fucking serious?" And they screenshotted it and ignored me. Update number 2. Got another brick wall Snapchat, only on for literally a second though. Update number 3. Fuck. Lying in bed watching Game of Thrones and I just got this. I'm fucking done. Update number 4. Today I got a Snapchat of that brick wall again. Update number 5. Just got a Snapchat video of weird as fuck noises and a black screen. It's in their stories too. Don't think I can post Snapchat videos though. Update number 6. It's been quiet for a few days. Sent Attergreen Snapchats, but they're unopened. Who is this shithead? And what does he want with me?
I'm a typical guy, and I have the Instagram app. I go on it basically every day to check out what my friends are doing and follow my favorite sports teams and things like that. One thing that I do a lot is go on the Explore page. This is just a bunch of random posts from accounts you don't follow, but that might interest you. It's interesting to look at them sometimes, and every new time you log into Instagram though, it's completely different. Now, I don't remember exactly when this started, but I know that I saw the same picture on the Explore page twice. This isn't a big deal, but then I saw it a third time. I thought this was pretty strange, but I still didn't click on it. A couple of times later though, I saw it yet again. I truly don't know how many times I saw the picture, but it just kept showing up. Eventually, I caved and I clicked on it, wondering why I kept seeing it. This photo was a picture of a car. It was seemingly random. The car was not particularly new or old, it just looked average. It was a gray 4-door sedan. The picture did not have the number of likes listed and didn't have any comments either. I clicked on the page and it was a random word with numbers, and the profile picture was one of the cars. The page only had like 5 followers. On the page were 4 photos and they were all of different cars. It was like somebody had just walked down the street and took pictures of random parked cars, but none of the cars were really that unique. 2 were on the side of the street parked, and 1 was in the driveway, and another was in a parking lot. I noticed that one of the cars in the photos was the same make and model that I had. Then I examined the photo a little bit closer. I soon realized that that was my car. I could tell that it was parked in my driveway. This gave me the chills when I saw it. Who ran this account? I shared the picture with a couple of my friends. None of the pictures had any captions or comments on them. My friends agreed that it was really weird, but didn't know who would do that or why. I was really curious, and I thought about commenting or sending a message to the page, but I decided not to. The very next day, I went on Instagram again. This time, I saw the same picture of my car on the Explore page. I clicked on it wondering if it was new, but it was in fact the same one. Then I clicked on the profile again because I saw that they had posted a story. The story was a poll. The poll said, "Which one?" Then there were the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. I did not vote because I didn't understand it at all at the time. I thought this was just really weird and decided to leave it alone. I got off of Instagram, and for the rest of the day, I didn't go anywhere. My car sat there in the driveway where it always did. I went to bed that night and got up the next morning to go to work. When I headed out for my car, It was gone. I couldn't believe it. I remembered the posts and everything. I called the police and then my boss. Luckily, my boss didn't mind, and she said I could come in a little bit late after I took care of the police report and everything. They took down all of the information that I could give them, including about the strange Instagram page. Unfortunately, when I looked, it had been deleted. The police assured me that they would do what they could to find my vehicle. I took a Lyft to work and back, and was able to get a rental car later that day through insurance. For the next few days, I was thinking about it all the time, until finally, I got a call that the police had located my vehicle. It was found abandoned, parked on the side of the road, about 20 miles away. Luckily, it had no damage. I was able to get it back, but I don't think the police ever found out who did it. That Instagram page was really bizarre though. Was the poll a way of deciding which car the person was going to steal? And why would they post these things on Instagram anyways? Either way, I hope nothing like this happens again.
So this happened a few weeks back. As I'm sure most of you know, Facebook now has a dating component to it. I matched with this guy who seemed pretty chill to me. He was older than me. His profile had stated that he was 27 years old and I had just turned 23. But in my mind, 4 years age difference really isn't that big of a deal. We talked for about a day or two and decided that we would meet up for a drink to try and get a feel for each other in person. When we met face to face, he looked a little older than just 27. He had quite a bit of gray mixed into his facial hair, but I figured he might just be one of those people whose hair turns gray earlier in life. No big deal. We have a few drinks and then we chatted for a bit. He again states that he's 27 years old. He was really nice, but he wouldn't stop staring at me and feeding me compliments with every single sentence that came out of his mouth. I'm really awkward and I'm honestly pretty average looking. I was really flattered that he was saying those things to me, but naturally, it made me uncomfortable. Shortly after that, I decided it was time for me to head out, since I had to be up for work around 4:30 a.m. the next day. He walked me to my car and then we started discussing his car. It really caught my attention due to the fact that it was a 1970 Camaro. Then out of nowhere, he offered to take me a drive in it around 10 p.m. I declined due to the time and to the fact that I had only known this guy for less than 2 hours, and he wants me to get in his car and go on a random drive late at night? Yeah, that definitely wasn't going to happen. Something I really enjoy is watching documentaries about serial killers as well as reading creepy encounters and let's not meet stories. The last thing I'm about to do is get into a vehicle with an unfamiliar man who's then going to take me to God knows where. I know what kind of danger that can lead to, and I wasn't going to risk it. He was very persistent about it, but I wouldn't budge. So I just got in my car and left for my drive home, which was about 45 minutes long. By the time I arrived home, I received a ton of messages from him. Most of them saying how much he already missed me, wants to build a future with me, and how he's never fallen for anyone this fast during his 38 years of life. Then continuing with further compliments. And that's when my stomach then dropped. He had just stated that he was 38 years old. That's not what I was told at the bar or what his profile said. I replied to him, wondering whether or not it bothered him that he was 15 years older than I was. And I know it bothered me for damn sure. He states that it didn't and he prefers to date younger women around my age. I didn't respond and I just went to bed after that. When I woke up the next morning, I had multiple text messages and 5 missed calls and voicemails from that guy. I'm not going to lie, I straight up ghosted him after that. I blocked him on every form of social media that I had, as well as his phone number, which I guess is a crappy thing to do on my part, but he really creeped me out. He was super charming, but he was way too pushy, and he was giving me some real Ted Bundy vibes. So shout out to Facebook. I really want to thank you for introducing me to the creepiest person I've ever gone on a date with. So yeah, I think that's the last time I'll use Facebook for a date.
Snapchat was still pretty new when this story took place. It was sometime in late 2011. During my freshman year of high school, I had one really close friend. Her name was Samantha. Samantha told me one Friday before the weekend that she would ask for a friend request the next day. She thought it would be really cool if we bandwagoned on the Snapchat trend The sooner the better, because Snapchat was almost non-existent at our school. And when I got home that day, I got a friend request. The profile picture was of Samantha. This was odd because she told me that she would invite me to her contacts the next day. Without hesitating, I accepted it. I figured she just got to it sooner. After I finished my homework the same day, I got a message from that account. 2 messages, in fact. They said, "Come to my house tomorrow, we can have a party." And the second was her address. I was really happy as I never went to her house before. We had just met earlier that year. And besides that, I wasn't often invited to parties. The address she gave me was to a house nearby, so I decided to walk over the next day. When I actually saw the house, I checked Google Maps multiple times to make sure I was led to the right destination. Because this place was very messy, and the windows were covered in those thank you bags you get at markets. Something didn't seem right. It was very modest for Samantha's family, yet we attended a private school. I realized the address was correct, so I knocked on the door, although I was a bit hesitant. It opened very quickly, and a man greeted me, almost like he was expecting me. He was about 6'3" with blonde hair. He really didn't look anything like Samantha, who was a short, black-haired girl. I asked if they were related. He simply said, "Yes." It was in a very plain and odd voice. Then I asked him about the bags on the windows, and he said it was because construction workers were still renovating the house. Before I could ask or say anything else, he beckoned me inside, moving aside so I could go through the doorway. I entered the small house. Sitting near a frayed couch was a large terrier, which he said they just bought a few days before I arrived. He told me to sit down while he went to get something. I checked the time on my phone, but the moment I grabbed it, it vibrated with a message. It was a notification from Snapchat. It was Samantha. It said, "Here is my Snapchat." And I thought things couldn't get weirder. She'd already sent me a request. Did she make another profile? Why would she do that? So immediately, as confused as I was, I messaged her back. "Your house is so weird. Where are you?" I said. "House?" she asked. "I have an apartment." My heart sank in my chest. Surely she was pulling my leg, just making a joke on me or something, I thought. "That's not funny," I messaged back. "Your dad's home. Where are you?" She didn't answer for a few seconds. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I got an answer. An answer that confirmed everything. "What are you talking about?" it said. "My mom's been single for a while. I'm waiting for you by the door. Where are you?" I lower my phone, eyes wide and breathing funny. What do I do? Did I really just walk into a stranger's house? A stranger that had laid bait for me? That's when I hear whispering from another room. The man stepped out of the room with 2 other men. One was holding a thick black bag with his hands. Fully assuming the worst, I sprinted out of the house as fast as I could. Not once did I look back, even as I heard the footsteps behind me. Eventually, they faded away. I didn't stop running until I got back home, until I was inside the house with the doors locked. Once I finally got a breather, my chest never burned so bad before. My mom and dad looked worried when they saw me, and they needed an explanation. In between breaths, I tried to tell them. They got the gist of it, and they called the police. When the police got there, they were gone. That house had been abandoned. There should have been no one living there.